from your complement hue scale that you just made, and your 9 complement hue scale painted Bristol chips, pencils, sharpener, eraser, and either a Sharpie or similar type marker. Step 1, right? So here it represents your Bristol sheet, right? Your 14, I think it should be 14 by 17 Bristol sheet. You're going to have a full sheet of Bristol, oriented vertically. It's fine. You're gonna take a long piece of frog tape, and this is key. You're gonna have it sticky side facing up, right, out towards us, right? So the sticky side is up, and then you're gonna tape this down. You're gonna secure this with across the Bristol with 2 smaller pieces of frog tape. Okay, so you're going about 1/3 of the way at the most, maybe 1/4 of the way up your Bristol with this piece of frog tape, sticky side up, and then tape it down on either side, just like this. Okay. Step 2. Oh, hold on. Oop. Step 2. Okay. So step 2, right, on that sticky piece of tape that you've just laid out, you're going to take your 9 chips, right, that you made from your complement hue scale, right, those painted Bristol chips from one complement all the way through the midpoint to the other, and you're going to attach them, stick them down onto the sticky tape, just like this, right? So starting out with your complement 1, and then going 2, 3, 4, 5 in the middle, and then all the way to step 9. Make sure you leave space in between, right? Sort of spread them out enough, and make sure you leave an even amount of space. It doesn't have to be, it does not have to be perfect. You want to go efficiently and fairly quickly with this, but just stick it down here. Next step. You are then, right, going to label, right, with your Sharpie or some kind of marker. You're going to label each tape row. So these are your tape rows here, right, these rows across. You're going to label each one of them. Right above all of your chips, you're going to label the first row above that tint 1, so T1. Tint 2 is the second row above, that's T2. Tint 3, right, it's T3, tint 4 is T4, and tint 5 row is all the way at the top. Below that, below your chips, your painted chips, you're going to have 2 shade rows, right? The first one is S1 for shade 1, and the second one is S2 for shade 2. Okay. Step 5, right? Now we get to mixing, right? And we're mixing our tints. We're just going to start out, again, pretty orderly here. Start out with your first complement, right? That pure hue. I might have... I also, sorry, neglected on this previous step, right? I also said label, right? Make sure you label your hue chips, right, that you've already stuck on here. Label them on the white part, right, with your Sharpie. Label them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 9, going from one of your complements, right, that's all the way over to the left, all the way over to 9, right, with 5 as that midpoint. Okay. All right, so now we get to mixing our tints. We're going to start out with our first hue, right, that first complement hue. We're going to put a little bit of that on our palette, okay, with our palette knife. That's all we need, just a little bit. You don't need much at all. And you're going to add a tiny, you're going to add a little bit of white to that, mix it through. You don't have to add too much, right? You want to sort of, you look at the progression here. It doesn't have to be the same as this, and it doesn't have to be super exacting, right? So a little bit lighter is going to, a little bit of white, mix it through, paint a chip, okay? Let it dry, set it aside to dry, right? Add a little bit more white to your mixture on your palette, okay? Mix it through, paint a chip, right? Set it aside, right? Add a little bit more white to that same mixture, right, on your palette. Mix it through, paint the chip, right? That's going to be your third tint here. Paint a chip, set it aside. Into the mixture you just mixed, add a little bit more white, right? Mix it through, paint your chip, set that chip aside to dry. And finally add the last bit of white, mix it through, and paint your last chip. As they're, once they're dry, right, you're gonna, or pretty dry, right, you're gonna stick them down, right, in a nice column, right, starting out with tint 1, then going to tint 2, tint 3, tint 4, and tint 5, just like this. And then go ahead and label them. Notice my labeling system, right? So here I have my first color named 1. So I have this as 1 and then dash T1. So that's tint 1 of my number 1 color. Here I have tint 2 of number 1 color. Here I have tint 3 of number 1 color. So it's 1 dash T3 and then 1 dash tint 4, 1 dash tint 5. Okay, so that's my notation. I think that's the easiest thing. That's what that way you know exactly where these go once we start to use them in the next stage of the project, which we'll get to on Wednesday. Okay. Okay, so the next step, right? You're going to do that same process of mixing your tints, right? Your 5 tints, painting, making sure after you mix each tint, right? After you add a little white, you're going to mix it through and paint that chip, right? So you're going to do that 5 times, right? Adding a little bit more white each time, mixing it through, painting the chip, mixing it through, or adding more, mixing it through, painting the chip, etc. All right, so you're going to do that for colors 2 through 9 until you end up with what we have here, okay? Let them dry, right, as you go. And then as you go, make sure you're, sticking them or affixing them to their proper location, right, in your columns as you go, basically from left to right, okay? Then make sure you label them. Really, really important. Don't lose sight of which one is which, and do it gradually. Label as you go. Don't wait until all of them are done because then that gets confusing. Okay, so label them all and stick them down to the sticky tape that's on your chart. Okay. Okay. The next step, you're going to be mixing 2 different shades, right? They're only 2, okay? These, since we're already fairly dark, we don't really have to go as many steps, right? You can see much more of a difference in the tints. You can always mix more if you need this, right? And that's true of any of these colors. This is just a starting point. All right, so for color number 1, we're going to add put a little bit of that up on your palette, right? Add a tiny bit of black to that, or a little bit of black, mix it through, paint it on a chip, set it aside to dry. Add a little bit more black to that same mixture, right? Mix it through, paint a chip, set it aside to dry, right? Then you're gonna affix them to below, right, color step number 1, right? So this is color step number 1, shade 1, with a little bit of black. This one is shade 2 of color step number 1 with a little bit more black, okay? And then we're gonna do that same process for all of the rest of the 9, the remaining 8 colors here, okay? And then don't forget, definitely don't forget to label them and label them as you go. So this is really what this is what you will end up with, right? Your chart should look like this. Again, that needs to be completed, before class, before you come to class on Wednesday, so you can actually use this for our next step. Okay, thanks. Bye.